There was a spoon in the sink. Not unusual, except this one was still wet, still steaming, and I hadn't eaten anything all day. That's what tipped me off. Not a lipstick mark. Not a scent. Not even a message on her phone. A spoon. I stood there in my wrinkled shirt and office shoes, looking down at it like it had just confessed something. That's how far I'd sunk. I was interrogating cutlery. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. She told me she'd be working late, that she was buried in reports, and wouldn't be back until after 10. I had planned to eat cold leftovers alone in silence. That was the arrangement. That was our routine. But then there was the spoon. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. That weird, artificial silence where even the refrigerator hum sounds suspicious. I walked through the hall slowly, like a guest in my own home. Then I saw it. Her heels, different ones than she wore to work this morning, sitting by the couch. And her coat, draped carelessly over the back of a chair. Not hung up, not folded, just dropped, like someone who had somewhere better to be. I didn't call her name. I didn't want to hear my voice echo off the walls like I was some ghost haunting a life I thought I owned. Instead, I waited. I sat in the chair across from the entryway and stared at the door like I was waiting for a package. 20 minutes passed. Then the doorknob turned. She walked in laughing, phone to her ear, giggling like a teenager. Dressed in that off-shoulder top I didn't recognize and jeans that were way too new to be forgotten purchases. She hadn't seen me yet. She kicked the door closed with her foot and said the words that detonated whatever was left of my sanity. I have a date, actually. Wish me luck. She wasn't talking to me, but I made sure she heard me anyway. Then I hope he likes cold lasagna and empty bank accounts. She froze. The phone slipped an inch from her ear. She turned toward me slowly, like she hadn't registered my voice yet. When she saw me sitting there, arms crossed, dead quiet, her face went pale. "Wah, how long have you been home?" I didn't answer. She hung up. Or maybe the other person did. I didn't care. She opened her mouth to say something. I cut her off. "I paid your car insurance yesterday. I took out the trash. I ordered groceries. I covered the rent because you forgot again. But please go. Have fun with your date." "Owen, it's not." "No. Don't explain. Explaining makes it real." She took a step closer. I stood up. "You knew I'd be home late. You wanted to sneak in before I noticed. But you left a spoon in the sink. That's how careful you were." Her eyes darted toward the kitchen like she could undo it somehow. Wiped the whole thing away like chalk on a sidewalk. I walked past her, picked up her purse from the table, and set it gently in her arms. "Don't forget this. Wouldn't want you showing up unprepared." She didn't move, just stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore, like I had shifted into someone else. But I hadn't. She had. She stood there like she was waiting for a script, like someone had cut her line from the scene and she didn't know what to do next. And maybe it sounds cruel, but I didn't help her. I didn't soften the blow. For once, I let the silence be as uncomfortable as it needed to be. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Not even the usual excuses. Not, "It's just a friend," or "You're overreacting," or "I didn't mean anything by it." That told me more than any explanation ever could. She'd been caught, not just in a lie, but in a world she never expected me to step into. I didn't scream. I didn't ask who he was or how long it had been going on. I didn't want to know, not because I didn't care, but because I knew it would ruin whatever scraps of myself I still had left. Some men go digging through ashes hoping to find gold. I wasn't going to be one of them. Not anymore. She finally moved, slowly placing her purse back on the table like she thought it would erase what I'd just handed her. She stepped forward, hesitant, like she was approaching an animal she wasn't sure would bite. "Owen, I didn't plan for it to be this way." I laughed. I actually laughed, and it scared both of us. It wasn't joyful or sarcastic. It was tired. Hollow. The kind of laugh that echoes when you've run out of ways to cry. "You didn't plan for it to be this way," I repeated. "What was the plan then? Come home smelling like him? Crawl into the bed I built, and hope I was too broken to ask?" She winced. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a moment I thought she might sit down. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned back against the wall and crossed her arms like she needed something to keep herself from falling apart. "He listens to me," she said softly, almost like she regretted it the second the words left her mouth. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not the woman I married, not the woman I fell in love with, but the woman standing in front of me now. Someone who'd grown so distant that she thought betrayal was a form of self-expression. I've been listening to you for years, I said. You just stopped saying anything worth hearing. She gasped. Not loud, not dramatic, just this soft, wounded sound that made me feel both guilty and strangely free at the same time. I hated that I still cared. I hated that a part of me wanted her to fall to her knees and beg me to fight for her. But she didn't, and I didn't. Instead, I walked to the bedroom. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't gather up my things. I just pulled a small envelope from my drawer and returned to the living room. She hadn't moved. I handed it to her. She took it without asking. Inside was a printout of the bank statement from our joint account. I had removed my name that morning. No drama, I said. No revenge. No flaming exit. I'm not that guy, but I won't be a doormat either. She looked down at the envelope, her hand clutching it like it burned. What do you want me to do? She whispered. I want you to enjoy your date, I replied. You chose it over me. Make sure it's worth it. And with that, I walked out. Not forever. Not yet. But just far enough that she knew I meant it. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I didn't go far. Just to my car. Just enough distance that the silence in the apartment couldn't follow me. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the steering column like it owed me answers. It was past 9 p.m., and I had nowhere to go. No plan. No backup couch. Not even a toothbrush. I was just a man in his own car, trying to outrun the realization that his marriage had been crumbling for longer than he dared admit. The street outside our building was quiet. A jogger passed. A delivery guy balanced 4 pizza boxes on one arm. And there I was, motionless, wondering how I became someone whose wife laughed into another man's ear before walking into our home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even put the keys in the ignition. I just sat there listening to the sound of myself existing. 10 minutes later, I saw the hallway light flick on through the window. She was still inside. Alone, maybe. Or maybe not. For a split second, the thought that he might be coming to pick her up made my stomach knot in a way I can't explain. It wasn't jealousy. It was humiliation. I imagined him shaking her hand at the door, giving her a smirk like, he knows now, like I had been the punchline of a private joke the whole time. But he didn't show. She didn't leave either. The light stayed on. Then my phone buzzed. One message. From her. 3 words. Where did you go? That was it. No apology. No panic. Just a casual question, like I'd stepped out to grab a soda. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I powered it off. I wasn't ready. Not to speak. Not to react. And definitely not to comfort her confusion. Because let's be honest, she wasn't worried about me. She was worried that I had become unpredictable. And in a way, she was right. It's strange how fast your mind recalibrates when the ground falls out beneath you. I started replaying our last year in reverse. Her new perfume, the sudden gym obsession, the mystery networking events. I remembered the time she got home late and had that little red mark under her collarbone she said was from a massage chair. I remembered the late-night laughter in the other room, muffled by a closed door and earbuds, and how she locked her phone the second I entered. It all lined up now, too neatly, like a puzzle that only clicked into place after the box had already been burned. Still, I didn't move. Eventually, I turned the phone back on. No new messages. But my screen lit up with a calendar notification I'd forgotten about. Anniversary dinner reminder, 7:30 p.m., La Mer. I stared at it. Today was our anniversary. She forgot. No, she chose to forget. Instead of sitting across from me at our favorite restaurant, holding my hand over melted candle wax, she was curling her hair and whispering into someone else's voicemail. I laughed again, same hollow laugh as before, and this time it came out with a bitterness I couldn't stop. I drove aimlessly, for over an hour, through quiet neighborhoods and under blinking streetlights. At one point, I ended up in the parking lot of a pharmacy, watching people buy diapers, shampoo, and ice cream. People with normal problems. People who didn't just lose their grip on the one thing they thought would never shift. Eventually, I pulled into a cheap motel off the highway. The kind of place with too much neon and not enough comfort. The room smelled like bleach and old smoke, but the sheets were clean and the lock worked. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, finally opening the photo gallery. There we were, smiling at a pumpkin patch 6 Octobers ago. Her nose crinkled, my hand around her shoulder. 2 people who thought they were building something solid. Now I was a ghost in a motel, and she was back in our apartment, probably sitting with that spoon in the sink, trying to figure out if she should feel guilty or just annoyed. I turned the phone face down and lay back, staring at the ceiling. And in that quiet, sterile room, I made a choice. I wasn't going back until she realized exactly what she'd lost. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I stared at the chipped ceiling of that dim motel room and tried to count how many decisions it took to ruin a marriage. Not big dramatic ones. Just the small, silent choices. The lies told with a smile. The cold shoulders excused by stress. The quiet betrayals that stack up in the corners until one day they collapse and take you down with them. At some point around 4 a.m., I ordered a black coffee from the vending machine in the lobby and stood by the scratched glass window, watching a semi-truck roll through the highway fog. That's when it hit me. I hadn't brought a change of clothes. I hadn't brought anything at all. I was a grown man in pajama pants and a wrinkled t-shirt, sipping stale coffee in a motel where no one even asked my name. But what really hurt, what actually carved into me, was that I hadn't gotten a single message from her since last night. Not a call, not a text, nothing. And yeah, maybe that sounds needy or pathetic, but I wasn't hoping she'd beg me to come home. I just wanted to know if she noticed I was gone. If there was even a sliver of discomfort in her world without me there to pick up the slack. At 6:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but the message was short. You should check your social. That's it. No punctuation. No name. My stomach dropped. I opened Facebook, half dreading what I might see, and there it was. A photo. Uploaded just hours ago. A group selfie at some bar I didn't recognize. All smiling faces, blurry neon lights. And there she was. Rowan. Smack in the middle. Same off-shoulder top. A drink in her hand. Head tilted against a man I'd never seen before. His arm around her waist like it belonged there. Like he'd earned it. The caption? Couldn't have asked for a better night, face blowing a kiss sparkles. No tags. Just vibes. But I knew. And worst of all, I knew she knew I would see it. She wanted me to. This wasn't a careless post. This was strategic. A calculated, passive-aggressive broadcast to let me know that my absence wasn't missed. That her date went just fine. That she didn't cry when the door closed. She celebrated. I threw the phone onto the bed so hard it bounced off the mattress and hit the carpet. I couldn't breathe for a minute. Couldn't think. Everything inside me churned with rage and grief, and that sickening self-loathing you only feel when you realize someone you love wanted to hurt you on purpose. I paced for an hour. Maybe two. Then, against my better judgment, I called her. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. What was I supposed to say? Hey, saw your party post. Thanks for the lifelong trauma. So I did something different. I waited another hour. Then I logged into our shared Amazon account. She had a wish list. A long one. Shoes, wireless earbuds, overpriced skincare, a countertop espresso machine she kept hinting I should buy for her birthday. I clicked through each item, removing my saved payment method and address. Then I created a new list. I named it Enjoy Your Date. I added one item, a $3.99 copy of How to Be Alone by Sarah Maitland. And I sent it to her. A minute later, I saw the notification. Rowan updated her wishlist privacy settings. Petty? Sure. But I wasn't aiming to win. I just wanted to stop feeling like I was disappearing in slow motion. Later that afternoon, I drove to my brother's place. I hadn't spoken to him much since he moved across town with his fiancée, but when I showed up at his door looking like I hadn't slept in years, he just opened the door and said, "Living room's yours. Bathroom's down the hall. Want pizza?" He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. That's what made it worse. My failure was visible now. No more hiding behind happy couple photos or couples brunch posts. No more pretending. I slept on his lumpy couch that night, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like his dog. And you know what? It was better than home. Because home wasn't real anymore. 2 mornings later, I was standing barefoot in my brother's kitchen, staring at a toaster that didn't work unless you held the lever down manually. He was already gone for work, and his fiancée had left a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Feel free to eat the cereal. Don't touch the almond milk. It's for smoothies only." I wasn't hungry. I just wanted to feel like I had control over one thing. Something as simple as toast. But even that fought me. The silence in his apartment was different. It wasn't sharp and accusing like the one I left behind. This one was empty in a clean kind of way. No lingering perfume in the air. No passive-aggressive thuds of makeup bags on countertops. No muffled giggles through the bathroom door. It was like being on pause from my own life. And for the first time in a while, I wasn't sure I wanted to press play again. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from my email. The subject line froze my blood. Statement ready. Joint checking account. I clicked. I shouldn't have, but I did. There were 6 new transactions, all within 24 hours. 1 high-end seafood restaurant, 2 rideshare payments, a boutique hotel, a florist, and get this, a digital subscription to some motivational podcast called Romantic Reset, Your Best Self After Separation. I had to read that one 3 times before I understood what it meant. She was celebrating. She was investing in the new her. And she was doing it with my money. My fingers were shaking. I don't even remember dialing her number, but suddenly the phone was ringing. She picked up on the 3rd tone. Her voice sounded light, chipper, like she had just finished a workout or a massage. Glenn, she said like my name was a mild surprise. Didn't expect to hear from you. You spent $318 on oysters and roses in the past 2 days, I said. No hello, no filter. That's more than our weekly groceries. Were the roses for him, or are you throwing yourself a funeral? There was a pause. Then she sighed like I was exhausting her. I used the joint account because I didn't have time to transfer funds. Relax, I'll pay you back. No, I said, flat. You won't. Because the account is frozen now. I called the bank. They locked it until further notice. That silenced her. For a second, I thought she'd hang up. You're being childish, she snapped. I laughed bitterly. You used to call me boring. Now I'm childish for not letting you wine and dine your rebound with my savings. It wasn't a date, she snapped, louder this time. It was dinner with someone who actually sees me. You wouldn't understand. No, I said, my voice dropping steady. I really wouldn't. She went quiet again. I could hear her breathing. Shaky, like she hadn't expected this version of me. The version that didn't plead, didn't ask for crumbs, didn't shrink in shame. Then she said something I didn't see coming. Do you even want to fix this? Or are you just trying to punish me now? It hit harder than I thought it would. Because for a second, I didn't know the answer. Did I want to fix it? Or did I just want her to feel what I felt? This slow unraveling of a life she said she loved, but treated like a backup plan. I didn't respond. I ended the call without another word. That afternoon, her sister messaged me. Out of nowhere. We'd never been close. Lauren always hovered in the background with her passive smirks and judgmental eyebrows. But this time, her tone was different. Just so you know, she told Mom that you left her for someone else. Says you had a meltdown and stormed out without explanation. I stared at the message. Not shocked. Just tired. I replied with a single sentence. Tell her I'm fine being the villain in her version of the story, as long as I don't have to live in it anymore. Lauren didn't respond, but she saw it. That night, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Saw a couple sitting on a bench sharing French fries. The girl leaned her head on the guy's shoulder, and I wondered if they knew how fragile that moment was. How easy it is to let comfort become apathy. How silence grows like mold when you stop tending to things. By the time I returned to the apartment, I had made another decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to decide whether I was worth chasing. I wasn't going to live suspended in her limbo. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, and I sent her one last message. This time, the paperwork won't be symbolic. I'm done. I expected silence. I expected avoidance. I expected some smug reply like, do what you need to. But instead, 5 minutes after I sent the final message about filing for divorce, Rowan called me. Not texted. Called. Her name flashed on my screen with a bold urgency I hadn't seen from her in years. I stared at it until it nearly stopped ringing. Then I picked up, not because I was ready, but because I needed to hear her voice crack. It didn't. At first. Glenn, she said, breathless like she'd run up a flight of stairs. We need to talk. No, we don't, I replied. You need to listen. But she wasn't interested in listening. Her words tumbled out in a frantic mess. I didn't expect you to actually start the process. I thought you were just angry. Look, I know I crossed a line, but we haven't been right for months, maybe longer. And you're not blameless in that. There it was, the shift. The sudden attempt to drag me into the mud with her. If she could make me a co-conspirator in the collapse, maybe it wouldn't feel so much like betrayal. Tell yourself whatever helps you sleep, I said flatly. But don't confuse my silence for agreement. She went quiet, and for a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd let the wall fall. But then came the pivot. I talked to a therapist this morning, she said. She said it's normal for people to drift apart. That sometimes infidelity is a symptom, not the disease. We can work through this. People rebuild from worse. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Not out of cruelty. Out of pure, stunned disbelief. Did your therapist also recommend bar hopping and draining the joint account while you figured that out? You're being impossible, she snapped. You don't understand what I've been going through. And you never asked what I've been carrying, I shot back. You just assumed I'd keep standing in the background, nodding politely while you figured yourself out in someone else's bed. I expected more rage, but instead I got a tone I hadn't heard in years, something between panic and pleading. Don't throw this away, Glenn. Not over a few bad nights. I wanted to scream. It wasn't a few nights, it was a few thousand days of disrespect you called marriage. But instead, I said nothing. That silence? It broke her faster than any insult could. Her voice cracked. Please, just come home. We can talk there. I can explain everything better in person. But I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to smell the echo of someone else on her clothes. I didn't want to sit at that kitchen table where I once poured her coffee while she scrolled through texts from another man. So I said the words that ended it, not with fury, but with finality. I'm not coming home. That place isn't home anymore. Then I ended the call. She didn't call back. That night, I drove by the apartment. I didn't go in. I just parked a block away, behind a row of leafless trees, and watched from a distance. Her lights were on, curtains drawn. I could see her silhouette pacing through the living room. She wasn't on the phone. She wasn't laughing. She was alone, and for the first time, it looked like she knew it. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe an hour. Maybe two. At one point, I considered getting out, walking up, knocking just once, not to fix things, but to see what she would say when she saw my face again. But I didn't, because I knew what she'd say, and I wasn't hungry for her regret. The next morning, I started moving my name off everything. I changed the passwords to all the services tied to my accounts. Canceled the shared subscriptions. Not out of pettiness, but precision. I wasn't cutting her out, I was cutting myself out. I was done sharing passwords with someone who couldn't share the truth. Midday, I got an email from our landlord. Rowan requested to remove your name from the lease. Can you confirm? I didn't reply. Not yet. I just sat there staring at the words. She was trying to erase me while still pretending she wanted me back. That was her power play, to secure the apartment and then offer me crumbs of reconciliation. Later that evening, I sent her a photo. It was the copy of the ring receipt from our engagement, the one she always said she wanted to frame one day because it meant more than the ring itself. I'd found it in a drawer at my brother's place, folded neatly inside an envelope I hadn't opened in years. I captioned it. This used to mean forever to me. You turned it into a receipt for a mistake. She didn't respond. But the next day, she finally removed herself from our shared Netflix profile. I took that as closure. A strange, silent kind. It had been 5 days since the last call, and the silence was starting to sound permanent. I thought that would bring peace, clean detachment, no more passive-aggressive texts or manipulative apologies. But instead, it just felt still. Like standing in a house after the fire's been put out. Nothing left to burn, but the air's still full of smoke. I'd spent most of the week pretending to adjust, signing papers, moving automatic payments, forwarding mail. On the outside, it probably looked like I was pulling myself together. But on the inside, I was unraveling in slow motion. I kept hearing her voice from that last call, not the words, just the tone. That desperate flicker of panic behind her anger. It haunted me more than anything else. I thought she'd reach out again. She didn't. So when the knock came at my brother's door on Saturday afternoon, I assumed it was a delivery. He was upstairs asleep after a night shift, so I opened the door myself. It was her, Rowan, standing there like she was caught between fight and flight. Her hair was messy, makeup faded, wearing the same hoodie she used to steal from me after arguments, like it made her look softer, more forgivable. But this time, it didn't work. Can we talk? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't move aside. She looked past me into the apartment. Please. I'm not here to yell. I need to explain what you think you know. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But there was a curiosity pulling at me, not hope, not weakness, just the need to understand the wreckage I'd been crawling out of. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like the floor might collapse. She stood in the middle of the living room and glanced at the mismatched couch cushions and half-folded laundry. So this is where you've been staying? She murmured, as if picturing it gave her some leverage. Don't romanticize it, I said. It's a borrowed couch, not a sanctuary. She turned to face me. I didn't sleep with him. The words landed like a rock thrown into still water. What? That guy, she said, eyes darting away. The one from the bar. The pictures. The one you think she stopped, swallowed hard. We kissed. That night. I was drunk. Stupid. I regretted it before I even got home. I didn't respond. Not because I believed her. Not because I didn't. But because the admission felt strategic, like she'd calculated how much of the truth would buy her sympathy without costing her too much shame. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you've already painted me as the villain, she replied, stepping closer. And if I'm going to wear that crown, I at least want you to know the full truth. I almost laughed. You want credit for stopping short of complete betrayal? She flinched. You lied. You flirted. You dressed up and left with someone else on our anniversary. The fact that you didn't strip in his hotel room doesn't make this a moral victory, Rowan. I didn't know how to tell you I wasn't happy anymore. Then why did you keep smiling? I asked. Why did you let me keep planning our future if you were already halfway out the door? She dropped into the armchair and covered her face with both hands. Because I didn't want to be the one to end it. There it was. The cowardice behind all her performances. The avoidance dressed up as empowerment. She wanted to be chased, blamed, forgiven, chosen, without ever having to do the hard work of choosing. I stood there, exhausted. Well, congratulations. You're not the one who ended it. I am. She looked up at me, tears now spilling freely. Do you still love me? The question was a punch to the chest. Not because I didn't have the answer, but because I did. And saying it out loud felt like watching a part of myself die. I love the version of you that used to come home and sit on the kitchen counter while I cooked. I love the woman who danced barefoot in the hallway on laundry days and read out loud from books she never finished. But that woman hasn't lived in our home for a long time. She stared at me like she was watching that version of herself drift away through the window. And then, quietly, she asked, "Can I see the papers?" I walked over to the table, opened the folder, and handed them to her. She didn't speak. She just traced her fingers over the first page, then flipped through the rest. Her hands trembled slightly. I thought you'd stall, she said, voice thin. I thought you'd hold out hope. I shook my head. Hope is what I lost the moment you turned your phone upside down at dinner. She blinked hard. For a few minutes, we said nothing. Just sat in the same room for the first time since everything cracked open. She finally stood, clutching the folder like it weighed 100 pounds. I guess this is it, she said. No, I replied softly. This is what you started. I'm just giving it a name. She nodded once, eyes rimmed red. Then she turned and walked out the door. She didn't slam it. She didn't cry out. She just left. And this time, I didn't follow. 2 weeks passed. Not in a blur, but in full, conscious moments. Every sunrise felt longer than the one before. Every night a little quieter, a little less heavy. It wasn't healing in the dramatic, tearful way I imagined it would be. It was slow. Mundane, even. Like learning how to breathe with different lungs. Like hearing my own thoughts again without filtering them through her moods or silences. The papers were filed. She didn't contest. No dramatic courtroom scene. No last-minute monologue. Just a silent acknowledgement that what we'd built together no longer fit either of us. The landlord confirmed the lease had been split. I got my own place. Small, quiet, a little uneven on the flooring, but mine. It smelled like fresh paint and old wood, and for the first time in years, every drawer and door only held my things. I bought a cheap coffee maker. The kind with just one button. No settings. No fancy espresso options. I started reading again, books I'd forgotten I loved. I started going on long walks with no destination, just to remind myself I could still move forward without chasing or being chased. I even got a plant. A little cactus. Figured if it could survive being neglected for days, maybe I could too. One Saturday morning, I went to the farmer's market alone. Not to mope, just to be outside. I walked past rows of flowers, fresh bread, organic honey. A woman at a ceramic stand asked if I wanted to try making a cup. I said no at first. Then I stood there staring at the unfinished pieces and thought, why not? Her name was Meredith. She had paint under her fingernails and a laugh that didn't sound rehearsed. We talked while she shaped clay and I destroyed mine. She didn't ask if I was single. She didn't try to fix me. She just smiled and told me I looked like someone who needed a project. A few days later, I went back. She remembered my name. We've talked a few times since. Nothing serious. No declarations. Just light. Easy. Like breathing without pressure. Rowan texted me once more. A short message. I understand now. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted her to hurt. but because some chapters end quietly, not with a bang, but with a firm, final period. And this was mine. It wasn't a story about revenge, or triumph, or watching her fall apart. It was a story about letting go without needing someone else to fall first. About learning that you don't have to win a breakup to reclaim your life. Sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes peace is louder than closure. And on a Sunday morning, with a mug I made myself and a quiet apartment full of new beginnings, I finally felt like myself again. Not perfect, not healed, but whole. And that was enough.